the intensity of a river at flood stage.
In Kernville, California. We had a hot 8-hour drive from the Grand Canyon to our next stop along the Kern River in California.
Kernville is a gorgeous, quaint little mountain town, known well for the Kern River that flows right through it. Some family friends graciously let us spend a couple nights there and showed us a great time.
Starting with the Kern River Brewing Company. If you ever find yourself near Sequoia National Park, or even Death Valley National Park, take a little detour and enjoy Kernville's premier brewery and restaurant.
Great food, incredible beer, and often live music to accompany it all.
The next morning, we met up with Lindsay, Tom, Dana, and Dan, whom we had just met the night before at Kern River Brewing Company, for a trip down the Kern River.
The winter of 2016-17 brought the Sierra Mountains some of the highest snow totals in recent memory.
So by June, all that snowmelt had the rivers of California raging.
Normally, the Kern River flows at 300 cubic feet per second, meaning that 300 cubic feet of water passes any given point on the river in 1 second.
When we shot the Kern, it was at flood stage, flowing at 5,000 cubic feet per second.
Now let's make one thing clear. This trip is not recommended for amateurs, which I am. I have probably only kayaked about 5 times in my entire life.
Now, I, on the other hand, was a professional whitewater rafting guide in Alaska. I've also canoed and kayaked since I was very young, so while I now feel like I'm no longer a professional, I was still very confident in my ability to get us down this river.
Well, I, on the other hand, was terrified. And this leads us to a travel pro tip: step outside of your comfort zone. The amount of water that this river was pushing was very overwhelming, to say the least. And although it was a scary experience, I'm very excited and very happy to say that I did it.
The Kern River stretches approximately 165 miles and is divided into 2 sections by Lake Isabella, the Upper and Lower Kern.
On this trip, we were shooting 2 sections of the Upper Kern, the cable and the lickety-split runs, stretching about 6 miles of the river.
Allie and I geared up and shoved off with our main guide, Lindsay, coaching us the whole way.
The Kern was busy that day, and we got tucked in with a rafting tour heading through our first set of rapids. The current swiftly carried us through the first set of rapids, and the high water level made it easy for us to float over some large obstacles, instead of having to navigate around them.
After the first set of rapids, we pulled into an eddy to regroup. An eddy is a spot on the river where the current is blocked, so you can sit still without being pulled downstream.
We got some pointers on how to successfully navigate the next section of the rapids, and then we were off. And before we knew it, we were at the next set of rapids.
This set had a lot more obstacles, with a lot of water flowing over them, so it was a bit more intense.
But Lindsay's coaching helped us get through it.
The run was going surprisingly smooth, until I twisted my paddle just the wrong way and... If you were ever wondering what the bottom of a river looks like at flood stage, this is it. I had just knocked my GoPro off my helmet. But at that moment, I had no time to think about a lost piece of gear. We had to focus on keeping our boat upright.
Luckily, the GoPro on my chest held strong, and we continued our way through the cable run.
We had survived another set of rapids, but even where the river was calm, it was still moving us along pretty fast.
But soon we reached our final set of rapids before our pull-up, and this one had the biggest swell yet.
Oh, there's a big swell there. There we go.
Lindsay took the lead on this one so we could follow her line around the swells. A line is basically your route through a challenging set of water. An experienced kayaker or rafter can look down a river and see lines very clearly.
We stuck behind Lindsay to make sure we kept upright.
And before long, another successful set of rapids were conquered.
We regrouped at our pullout and decided to extend our journey a little further down the Kern. So after shuffling cars, we set out again, this time attacking the lickety-split run.
This section of river was amped up with intense swells. And as we were just getting out of our first set of rapids, I overcorrected on one swell and we went sideways right into the next one.
The first thing to remember when you capsize on a river is to stay with your boat. So the first thing we did was grab onto it.
The second thing to remember is to get your boat and your feet between you and downriver. Now luckily we had just gotten through a very intense section, and now the waters were more calm, but it was still moving swiftly.
But the crew we were with moved quickly, and before we knew it, they had formed a circle around us and their boats to protect us from any objects in the river.
Keep in mind, we were kayaking with pros. Within about 90 seconds from capsizing, our boat was flipped back upright and we were back in, ready to take on the rest of the river. As we continued on, the river eventually calmed as we reached the lowest portion of the upper current.
As the river narrowed, we came upon a group of cranes, and our presence caused them to all leap up and begin flying in a mini Jurassic Park moment.
They're like tiny dinosaurs.
The rapids of the Kern River were a beast that day, but we got through the most challenging sections unharmed.
A little more wet than we should have been, but completely unharmed.
And that's all thanks to our gracious guides and hosts who coached us through this challenging river and helped us out when we needed it the most.
So thank you, Lindsay, Dan, Dana, and Tom for this unforgettable experience.
And if you're asking yourself, how did I get that footage from the GoPro at the bottom of the river? Make sure to check out our other video, From the Bottom of the Kern, because it's a crazy story of how that GoPro ended up back at my doorstep.
We hope you enjoyed shooting the Kern as much as we did.
For more adventures like this one, be sure that you click subscribe.
Because our next episode, we head to Sequoia National Park
But until then, make sure that you get out there and explore.
by taking the scenic route.